The darkness of space held no mercy for the dying fleet. 17 ships drifted through the void, their hulls scarred with blast marks and their engines barely functioning. Inside these vessels, 2 million Valoran souls clung to life, refugees from a world that no longer existed. Velos Prime had burned 3 months ago, and the images still haunted every survivor who closed their eyes. Commander Taimin stood on the bridge of the lead vessel, his 4-fingered hands gripping the command rail until his knuckles turned pale. He had been a decorated officer once, proud of his military service. Now he commanded a graveyard fleet filled with the wounded, the starving, and the hopeless. Every day brought new deaths. Every hour brought systems failing on ships that were never meant to travel this far. Behind him, Dr. Hana worked at a medical station, reviewing casualty reports. Her face showed the exhaustion of someone who had not slept properly in weeks. She had 300 critical patients and supplies for maybe 50. Every decision became a choice of who would live and who would die. The weight of it carved lines into her features that had not been there before the war. Young Jiho sat at the navigation console, his hands steady on the controls despite his youth. He had graduated from the academy just 2 days before the invasion began. His family had been in the southern continent when the bombardment started. He did not talk about them anymore. He did not talk about much at all. He just flew because flying meant moving forward, and moving forward meant not thinking about what lay behind. Elder Counselor Mireille walked through the corridors of the flagship, visiting families huddled in cargo bays that had been converted to living quarters. She carried herself with dignity despite her age and fatigue. Someone had to maintain order. Someone had to give people reason to believe tomorrow would come, even when she herself had stopped believing weeks ago. The fleet had been running on emergency power for days when Jiho noticed something on his sensors. At first he thought it was a malfunction. The readings showed electromagnetic signals ahead, thousands of them, organized in patterns that suggested civilization. He checked 3 times before he trusted his instruments enough to speak. "Commander," he said quietly, "I have something." Taman crossed the bridge in 4 quick strides. He looked at the display and felt his hearts beat faster. A system, an inhabited system. The question that followed that discovery was darker than the void around them. Would this civilization be their salvation or their end? The council met within the hour. The debate was fierce. Some argued they should avoid contact completely, slip past and keep searching for an empty world. They had learned the universe held more predators than friends. Others pointed out the obvious truth that no one wanted to say aloud. They would not survive another month of travel. This was their only chance. Mireille listened to both sides, then made the decision that would change everything. "We send a distress call. If they destroy us, at least it will be quick. If they help us, perhaps some mercy still exists in this galaxy." The message went out in every frequency they could broadcast. A simple plea in mathematical language that any spacefaring species would understand. "We are refugees. We are dying. We mean no harm. Please help." For 6 hours there was only silence. Some people prayed to the old gods of Velos. Others simply waited. Jiho kept his hands on the controls, ready to jump the fleet away if weapon signatures appeared on his sensors. Then they came. The human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a precision that made Taiman's military mind take notice. There were 5 vessels, sleek and powerful, their hulls unmarked by battle. They took up positions around the Valoran fleet but did not power weapons. They simply waited. A communication channel opened. The voice that came through spoke in strange sounds that the translator struggled to process. After a moment, it resolved into words the Valorans could understand. "This is Captain Doyen of the United Human Space Vessel Indomitable. We received your distress call. What is your situation?" Taman found himself unable to speak for a moment. In all his years of military service, he had never heard a potential first contact begin with a question about their well-being. He cleared his throat and explained. The invasion, the destruction of Velos Prime, the 3 months of running, the 2 million souls depending on what happened in the next few minutes. There was a pause. Then Captain Doyen spoke again, and his voice carried something Taman had not heard in a long time. "Compassion. Stand by. I'm contacting my government. We'll get you help." The wait that followed felt longer than the 3 months of flight. Mireille stood beside Tamin on the bridge, both of them staring at the human ships. Dr. Hana joined them, leaving her medical station for the first time in days. Even Jiho turned from his console to watch. When the response came, it was not from Captain Doyen. It was a transmission from Earth itself, from their coalition government. The message was simple and direct. Velaran Fleet, this is Earth Coalition Command. Your request for asylum has been approved. We are preparing facilities now. You will be escorted to Mars orbit where temporary habitats are being constructed. Welcome to the Sol system. You are safe now. No one on the bridge spoke. Mireille felt tears streaming down her face, something she had forbidden herself since the evacuation. Dr. Hana sat down heavily, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. Jiho put his head down on his console and his shoulders shook. Taemin tried to maintain his composure. He tried to respond with the dignity befitting a military commander. Instead, he heard his own voice break as he said, "Thank you." The human escort fleet guided them inward, moving slowly to match the pace of the damaged Valoran vessels. Along the way, human repair crews actually docked with the worst ships and began emergency fixes. They asked for nothing in return. They simply worked. As they passed the orbit of the fourth planet, Taemin saw Mars through the viewport. Already he could see construction beginning. Human ships swarmed around the planet like insects, building at a speed that seemed impossible. Habitats were taking shape in orbit. Landing facilities were being cleared on the surface. Captain Doyen contacted them again. "We have medical ships on the way for your critical patients. Construction crews are working in shifts around the clock. We'll have basic housing ready in 48 hours. Full facilities in 2 weeks. Why?" The question came from Mireille before she could stop herself. "Why would you do this for strangers?" There was a pause. When Doyen answered, his voice was thoughtful. "Because you needed help. Because we have the means to give it. And because the universe is dark enough without good people standing aside when others suffer." The first Velaran ships began docking procedures at the new orbital facilities. Human volunteers were already there, ready to assist. Taemin watched families being helped off vessels, being given food and water and blankets. He watched human doctors working alongside Dr. Hana, sharing medicines and techniques. He found himself on an observation deck, staring out at the red planet below and the blue-green one beyond it. Earth, the home world of a species that had just given everything to help people they had never met. Dr. Hana found him there an hour later. She stood beside him in silence for a while before speaking. "I scanned their medical databases. Their history. Taemin, these humans have been through horrors, wars, plagues. Their own history is soaked in blood. And yet they help us," Taemin said quietly. "Maybe because of it," Hana replied. "Maybe they understand what it means to suffer, to lose everything, to need someone to extend a hand." Taemin watched human construction crews working in the void, building homes for strangers. "Perhaps," he said, his voice carrying the first hint of hope he had felt in months. "We have finally found the good in this universe." The temporary habitats on Mars grew into something more permanent with each passing day. What had started as emergency shelters transformed into actual living spaces, with human engineers working alongside Valoran families to make things feel like home. The speed of it amazed everyone. Human workers seemed to operate on minimal sleep, constantly building, improving, and adjusting based on Valoran needs. Jiho found himself spending most of his time in the spacecraft hangar bay. His pilot skills were useless now that the fleet had stopped running, so he volunteered to help with ship repairs. That was where he met Hyunwoo, a human engineer with grease under his fingernails and a constant smile on his face. "You guys built these ships to last," Hyunwoo said, examining the engine core of a Velaran transport vessel. "Good materials, smart design, very efficient." Jiho appreciated the compliment but shook his head. They were not built for combat. The Krethic cut through them like they were made of paper. Hyunwoo pulled out a strange roll of silver adhesive and began patching a crack in the hull plate. "Well, maybe we can fix that. Human ships are built tough because we had to learn the hard way. Want to see some of our designs?" That began a friendship that would span the coming months. Hyunwoo showed Jiho human spacecraft engineering, and Jiho shared Valoran propulsion theories. They found that despite coming from different worlds, they both loved the challenge of making machines do impossible things. Hyunwoo introduced Jiho to the human concept of making it work with whatever you have on hand, which seemed insane but somehow functioned. Across the settlement, Dr. Hana worked in the medical complex alongside human doctors. She had expected differences in their techniques, but what surprised her was their attitude. Human medical staff dealt with trauma and death with a strange combination of deep compassion and dark humor. When she asked about it, a human nurse named Sujin explained. "If we did not laugh, we would cry all the time," Sujin said, organizing medical supplies with practiced efficiency. "We have seen too much, lost too many patients, worked too many disasters. The humor is not disrespect. It is survival." Hana understood that. The Valoran doctors had developed their own coping methods during the evacuation. Still, humans seemed to carry a resilience that went deeper than technique. They had a way of simply refusing to give up, even when logic said all was lost. "Your species has been through much," Hana observed during a quiet moment between patient treatments. Sujin nodded. "World wars, plagues that killed millions, natural disasters, near-extinction events more than once. We are still here. That is what we do. We survive, and we help others survive too." While daily life found its rhythm, Elder Counselor Mirai prepared for the meeting she had been dreading. The Earth Coalition Council had requested her presence to discuss the Valoran situation in full detail. She traveled to Earth itself, to a building in what humans called Geneva, and faced a room full of their leaders. The human officials listened as she explained the history of the Krethic Dominion, how they had conquered 47 civilizations in the past 2 centuries, how they did not take prisoners or allow surrenders, how they believed in total domination or total destruction. When she finished, the room was silent. Then Mirai spoke the warning she had to give. "The Krethic do not leave survivors. They do not leave witnesses. By sheltering us, you have made yourselves targets. They will come. And when they do, they will not offer you terms. They will simply attack." The human leaders exchanged glances. Some looked worried. Others looked thoughtful. Then Admiral Siak, the commander of humanity's military forces, spoke. He was an older man with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen combat. "Then we will be ready," he said simply. Mirai wanted to explain that readiness would not matter, that the Krethic fleet was vast beyond imagination, that resistance was suicide. But she looked at Admiral Sayok's face and realized he already knew all of this. He was choosing to fight anyway. What Mirai did not see, because humans kept it quiet, was the massive mobilization happening across the Sol system. Shipyards that had been producing civilian vessels switched to military production. Defense platforms rose from construction yards in orbits around every major planet. The human fleet, which had been a modest defense force in peacetime, began expanding at a rate that would have alarmed any military analyst. Human soldiers who had been training in simulation were suddenly drilling for real combat. Weapon systems that had been in storage were being brought online and upgraded. Supply chains were being redirected. The entire human civilization was shifting from peace to war footing, and they were doing it with the efficiency of a species that had done it many times before. Commander Taemin noticed some of it. He saw new military vessels being launched from construction facilities. He saw human soldiers conducting training exercises near the Valoran settlement. When he asked Captain Doyen about it during a scheduled meeting, the human officer was honest. "We take your warning seriously," Doyen said. "If the Krethic come, we will not be caught unprepared." "You should surrender us," Taemin said, not for the first time. "Hand us over and save your people. We are not worth dying for." Doyen looked at him for a long moment. "Commander, I understand you come from a military background. So let me explain something about human military doctrine. We do not abandon people under our protection, ever. You are here under Earth's asylum. That means you are our responsibility. The Krethic want you? They will have to go through us." The conviction in his voice left Taemin speechless. In the settlement, young Valoran children began attending school with human teachers. The cultural exchange went both ways. Humans learned about Valoran history, art, and music. Valorans learned about Earth, a planet that had somehow produced a species capable of both terrible violence and incredible kindness. One evening, Mirai sat with a human historian named Minho in an observation lounge overlooking the Martian landscape. She had asked to meet him to understand these strange beings who had given them shelter. "Your people confuse me," she admitted. "You have been so kind, so generous. Yet your military history shows you are capable of great destruction. How do you reconcile these things?" Minho considered the question carefully. "We are complicated. We have done terrible things to each other throughout our history. Wars, genocides, cruelty beyond measure. But we have also done beautiful things. We have built civilizations, created art, reached for the stars. I think maybe the key is that we learned from our worst moments. We know what it means to be refugees, to be hunted, to be the underdog. Maybe that is why we cannot turn away from others in need. Even when it puts you in danger? Mirai asked. Especially then, Minho replied. Because if we only do the right thing when it is safe, what does that say about us? 3 months after the Velerans arrived, the long-range sensor arrays detected anomalies at the edge of the Sol system. Strange readings. Ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Many ships. The sensor operators checked and rechecked their data before reporting to Admiral Siak. The Krethic had found them. The human fleet began deploying immediately, taking up positions throughout the system. Civilian ships were ordered to protected orbits. Defense platforms powered up weapons that had never been fired in anger. Soldiers boarded their vessels and checked their equipment one final time. Taemin stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, where Captain Doyen had invited him to observe. The Krethic fleet appeared on the display and Taemin felt his heart sink. 300 vessels. Maybe more. The human fleet numbered less than 100. Captain, Taemin said urgently, you cannot win this. Please, surrender us and save your people. We are not worth this. Doyen did not take his eyes off the display. When he spoke, his voice was calm and absolutely certain. Commander Taemin, you need to understand something about humanity. We have a saying, we do not leave our people behind. You are under our protection. That makes you our people. The Krethic want you. They can try to take you, but they will have to destroy us first. And I promise you, we will make them pay for every meter of space they cross. Admiral Siak's voice came through on all fleet channels, broadcasting to every human ship and every Valoran settlement. All ships, this is Admiral Siak. The Krethic Dominion has entered our space with hostile intent. They believe we will surrender what we protect. They are wrong. Today we show them what happens when you threaten Earth and those under our care. All ships, battle stations, let us remind the galaxy why humanity does not back down. Taemin watched the human fleet move into position and realized something that terrified and awed him in equal measure. These humans were not just willing to fight. The Krethic war fleet hung in space like a swarm of metal insects, blotting out the stars with their numbers. 317 vessels of various sizes, all bristling with weapons that had conquered dozens of civilizations. On the command ship, War Master Krell watched the primitive human fleet with satisfaction. This would be quick. The ultimatum came through on all frequencies, delivered in a voice that expected immediate obedience. Attention, human vessels. You harbor criminals who fled Krethic justice. Surrender the Valoran refugees within 24 Earth hours or your system will be pacified. This is your only warning. On Earth, the Coalition Council convened an emergency session. The debate lasted less than 10 minutes. The vote was unanimous. The response was drafted, approved, and transmitted back within the hour. Admiral Siak himself delivered Earth's reply. Krethic Dominion, this is Admiral Siak of the United Human Space Forces. Your ultimatum is denied. The Valorans are under our protection. Leave our space immediately or face the consequences. On the Krethic command ship, War Master Krell actually laughed. No species had ever refused them. Lesser civilizations always surrendered when they saw the might of the Dominion. This would be an amusing lesson to teach these humans about the proper order of the galaxy. In the Valoran settlement on Mars, panic spread as news of the Krethic arrival became public. Families who had just begun to feel safe were suddenly facing their nightmare again. Human officials began emergency evacuations of outer stations, moving civilians to protected facilities deeper in the system. But the evacuation orders did not include Mars. Instead, massive defensive shields powered up around the Valoran settlement, energy barriers strong enough to withstand orbital bombardment. Human soldiers took up positions around the habitats, not to guard the Valorans, but to defend alongside them. Yunji, a human coordinator who had worked with Valoran families since their arrival, walked through the settlement with a calm she did not feel. Frightened refugees asked her why they were not being moved, why they were being left as bait to draw the Krethic in. You are not bait, she told them firmly. You are family. We defend family. We do not use them as shields. The barriers around this settlement are the strongest in the system. You are as safe as we can make you. And every human soldier out there has orders to protect you with their lives. Dr. Hana found herself unable to focus on her medical duties. She stood in the hospital wing, staring out at the shields humming with power above them. Nurse Sujin came to stand beside her. "We will not let them take you," Sujin said quietly. "You should run," Hana replied. "Save yourselves. We are already dead. We died when Velos Prime burned. You gave us 3 more months of life. That is more than we deserved." Sujin turned to face her. "Listen to me. We humans have a long memory. We remember being refugees. We remember being hunted. We remember what it was like when no one helped us. So when we say we will protect you, we mean it, not because you deserve it or earned it, but because it is the right thing to do." In orbit above Earth, the human fleet formed into battle groups. Captain Doyen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, reviewing tactical displays with Commander Taemin at his side. The Valoran officer had refused to stay in the shelter, insisting on being present for what came next. "Your formation is wrong," Taemin said, studying the deployment patterns. "You are outnumbered 3-1. Standard doctrine says you should create a defensive sphere and force them to come through concentrated fire." Doyen smiled grimly. "We have different ideas about standard doctrine. Watch." The Krethic fleet advanced, moving with the confidence of a force that had never known defeat. They expected the humans to cluster defensively, to try to create killing zones to fight a desperate last stand. What they did not expect was what happened next. The human fleet split into fast-moving squadrons and accelerated directly toward the Krethic formation. It looked like suicide. Taemin actually gasped when he saw the maneuver begin. "Captain, what are you doing?" "You are charging straight at them." "Yes," Doyen replied calmly. "Humans learned a long time ago that the best defense is often a violent offense. We call it aggressive defense. Make the enemy react to us instead of the other way around." The Indomitable led its squadron directly into the heart of the Krethic formation, shields at maximum, every weapon firing. The Krethic expected the human ships to veer away at the last moment. They did not. The human vessels punched through the enemy lines like bullets through cloth, their weapons raking across Krethic hulls at point-blank range. 6 Krethic capital ships lost power in that first insane charge. The Krethic formation scattered in confusion. No enemy had ever attacked them like this with such reckless fury, but the Krethic were not weak. They adapted quickly, reforming their lines and bringing their superior numbers to bear. Human ships began taking damage. The destroyer Dauntless exploded in a ball of fire. The cruiser Relentless lost its engines and drifted helpless. The fight turned brutal. On the bridge of the Indomitable, damage reports flooded in from across the fleet. They were losing. The math was simple and terrible. 3-1 odds meant the humans could not win through conventional fighting. Then Admiral Siak gave the order that changed everything. All ships activate secondary defense grid. Across the Sol system, weapons platforms that had seemed like simple communications arrays suddenly powered up. Railgun satellites that had been disguised as scientific instruments revealed their true purpose. Mass driver installations hidden in the asteroid belt opened fire. The entire system had been turned into a weapon. Krethic ships found themselves being shot from multiple directions at once. The asteroids themselves seemed to attack, launching massive projectiles at incredible speeds. Fusion mines, seeded throughout the approach vectors weeks ago, detonated in carefully planned patterns. War Master, Krell watched his fleet take damage and felt, something he had not experienced in decades, doubt. These humans had prepared for war while appearing peaceful. They had turned their entire system into a trap. This was not the behavior of a weak species that would surrender. In the Valoran settlement, young Jiho sat with Hyunwoo in the spacecraft hangar. They watched the battle unfold on a display screen, seeing human ships fight and die to protect people they barely knew. "We have to help them," Jiho said suddenly. "We cannot just sit here while they die for us." Hyunwoo looked at him. "Your ships are not military vessels." "But we know how to fly," Jiho replied. "And we know Krethic weak points. We fought them for weeks before we ran. We can help." Against orders, Jiho gathered every Valoran pilot who would listen. They took maintenance craft, mining vessels, anything that could fly and mount a weapon. It was a small fleet, poorly armed and desperate, but it was something. Commander Taemin learned what the young pilots were doing and made a decision he should have made hours ago. He contacted every Valoran military officer in the settlement. "We were soldiers once," he told them. "Yes, we lost. Yes, we ran. But today we have a chance to stand and fight alongside people who chose to protect us. Who is with me? Every officer volunteered. They took Valoran military shuttles out of storage, vessels that had been damaged but repaired by human engineers. It was not much of a fleet, but it was theirs. Dr. Hanna broadcast to both human and Valoran forces from the medical center. You gave us shelter when we had nothing. You stood between us and death when you had no reason to. Now let us stand with you. Let us prove that we are worth what you have given us. The combined human-Valoran fleet hit the Krethik formation from an unexpected angle. The Valorans targeted specific weak points in Krethik ships, places they had learned to exploit during their own desperate war. Human vessels followed up with overwhelming firepower to exploit the breaches. War Master Krell watched his tactical display with growing alarm. His fleet was taking unacceptable losses. Ships that should have died in the first engagement were somehow still fighting. The humans refused to retreat even when damaged. They simply adjusted their tactics and kept attacking. Worse, the Valorans were here. The very refugees he had been sent to eliminate were now fighting back with the fury of people who had lost everything and would not lose again. Every ship they destroyed seemed to make the survivors fight harder. "Pull back," Krell ordered. "Reform at the outer system marker. We regroup and crush them with our full might." The Krethik fleet began to retreat, trying to create distance to reorganize. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Doyen watched them fall back. Taman expected the humans to celebrate their defensive victory. Instead, Admiral Siak gave an order that made his blood run cold. "All ships pursuit formation. Maximum speed. We are not letting them regroup." "Admiral," Taman said urgently, "they are retreating. You won, you drove them off. Take the victory." Admiral Siak turned to face him. "Commander, you need to understand something about human military doctrine. We do not just survive. We do not just defend. We make absolutely certain the threat does not come back. The Krethik came to our home to take people under our protection. That was their mistake. Now we teach them why that was the worst decision they ever made." The human fleet pursued the retreating Krethik, and Taimin realized with dawning horror that the battle was not over. The Krethik fleet regrouped at the edge of the Sol system, expecting time to repair and reorganize. What they got instead was a human fleet that refused to stop coming. Captain Doyen's squadron hit them 6 hours after the first battle, attacking supply vessels and disrupting repair operations. The Krethik drove them off, but the damage was done. Commander Taemin stood on the bridge of a Valoran support vessel, watching human tactics with growing confusion. Everything he knew about military strategy said you did not pursue a larger force. You did not provoke an enemy that could crush you with numbers. You certainly did not keep attacking when you should be reinforcing your defenses. "This is madness," he said to Captain Doyen during a brief communication. "You are throwing away the advantage of defending your own system." "Why?" Doyen's face on the screen looked tired but determined. "Because defense is not enough. If we just push them back, they regroup and come again. We have to make them understand that attacking Earth was not just a mistake. It was the worst decision they ever made. We have to break their will to fight." "But you cannot win against their numbers," Taemin insisted. "Winning is not about numbers," Doyen replied. "It is about making the enemy decide the cost is too high. We are teaching them that lesson right now." The human fleet employed tactics that seemed to come from some dark place in their collective memory. Hit-and-run attacks, ambushes at jump points, psychological warfare that broadcasted Krethik casualties on all frequencies. They hacked into Krethik communications and sowed discord among their forces. They made every moment in space a potential death trap. War Master Krell found himself facing a problem he had never encountered. His ships could not rest. His crews could not repair without being attacked. Human squadrons appeared from nowhere, struck hard, and vanished before the Krethik could respond properly. It was like fighting shadows. On Mars, Elder Counselor Mirai sat with the human historian Minho, trying to understand what she was witnessing. The battle reports showed human forces pursuing deep into space, far from the safety of their defensive positions. "I do not understand your people," she admitted. "When we first arrived, you were so peaceful, so welcoming. Your cities have gardens and schools and art. But now I watch your military turn into something else entirely. How do you reconcile these two sides?" Minho was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. "Peace does not mean weakness, Counselor. Kindness does not mean passivity. You made the mistake of thinking humans are gentle because we choose to be gentle. The Krethic made a bigger mistake. They threatened people we decided to protect. They made it personal. Personal, Mirai repeated. You have to understand Earth's history, Minho explained. We spent thousands of years fighting each other. We nearly destroyed ourselves more than once. We know war. We know violence. We are very, very good at both. But we learned something from all that bloodshed. We learned that violence should have a purpose. It should protect, not conquer. The Krethic came here to take you away. That triggered something deep in human psychology. You are under our protection. That makes you ours. And we protect what is ours with everything we have. Deep in Krethic space, intelligence analysts were conducting urgent research into their enemy. What they discovered terrified them. Human history was not like other species. Most civilizations developed slowly, with gradual technological progress. Humans had a different pattern. Every major conflict pushed their weapons technology forward by decades. Wars drove innovation at incredible speed. The analysts reported to War Master Krell with growing alarm. Sir, human history shows multiple near-extinction events. Ice ages, supervolcanoes, plagues that killed significant portions of their population. They survived all of it. They are biologically adapted to survive against impossible odds. So, Krell demanded, we have superior numbers. With respect, sir, humans do not fight like civilized species. Their military history shows they excel at asymmetric warfare. When outnumbered, they become more dangerous, not less. They use tactics we would consider dishonorable. They take risks we would consider suicidal. And they do not stop. Ever. Even when logic says they should surrender, they keep fighting. Krell dismissed the report. Numbers always won in the end. But privately, he was starting to doubt. The turning point came 3 weeks into the running battle. A human squadron led by Doyen caught a Krethic supply convoy in an asteroid field. Instead of just destroying the ships, they captured one intact. Human intelligence officers, led by a skilled analyst named Soman, extracted the navigation computer. What they found was invaluable. Complete routes to Krethic military installations, supply depot locations, communication relay positions, fleet deployment patterns, the entire strategic map of Krethic operations in this sector of space. Admiral Seok reviewed the data with his command staff. Then he made a decision that shocked everyone who heard it. We are not going to wait for them to regroup. We are taking the fight to their territory. Prepare the fleet for offensive operations. Taemin was present when the announcement was made. Admiral, this is insane. You are talking about invading Krethic space. You do not have the forces for that. We do not need to invade, Seok replied calmly. We need to make them hurt. We are going to systematically destroy their logistics network, supply depots, communication relays, forward bases. We are going to make it impossible for them to wage war effectively, and we are going to do it fast before they can adapt. But why? Taemin almost shouted. You won. You drove them away from Earth. Why risk more lives? Admiral Seok's expression hardened. Because driving them away is not enough. They came to our home to take people under our protection. They need to understand that actions have consequences. We are those consequences. Dr. Hana watched human soldiers prepare for the offensive and felt deeply conflicted. These same people who had gently helped Velaran children, who had worked around the clock to build homes for strangers, were now preparing to bring war to the Krethic. The duality was disturbing. Nurse Sujin found her staring at a transport ship loading troops. You are trying to understand us, Sujin said softly. I cannot reconcile what I see, Hana admitted. You are good people, kind people, but you are about to do terrible things. We are going to stop bad people from doing terrible things, Sujin corrected. There is a difference. The Krethic have conquered 47 civilizations. How many refugees died because no one stood up to them? How many more will die if we do not stop them now? Yes, what we are about to do is harsh, but sometimes harsh is necessary. The human fleet jumped into Krethic space and began systematic destruction of military infrastructure. They did not target civilians. They did not commit atrocities. But they were ruthlessly efficient at dismantling the Krethic war machine. Supply depots exploded. Communication relays went dark. Forward bases were reduced to debris fields. The Krethic found themselves unable to coordinate their forces effectively. Reinforcements could not reach battle zones because humans had destroyed the logistics network. War Master Krell watched his carefully built military infrastructure crumble and realized he had made a catastrophic error. He had assumed humans would fight defensively, that they would be content with protecting their system. Instead, they had brought total war to Krethic space. Admiral Seok broadcast a message directly to Krethic leadership. His face was calm, but his words carried absolute conviction. You came to our home to take people under our protection. Now you will answer for it. Here are your options. Withdraw all forces from former Valoran space. Provide reparations to the species you have conquered. Submit to peace negotiations. Or we continue destroying your military capability until you cannot threaten anyone ever again. You have 72 hours to decide. In Krethic government chambers, heated debates erupted. Some leaders wanted to escalate, to commit their full military might to crush these upstart humans. Others argued that humans were unlike any species they had encountered. They did not just defend. They retaliated with calculated fury that grew worse with each engagement. The moderate faction showed recordings of human tactics. Ships continuing to fight even when crippled. Pilots ejecting only after their vessels were completely destroyed. Crews volunteering for suicide missions to accomplish objectives. A species that treated war not as a contest but as a total commitment. They will not stop, one Krethic counselor warned. Even if we destroy their military, their civilians will fight. Even if we occupy their worlds, they will resist. These humans do not surrender. They escalate. We attacked refugees they chose to protect, and they took it as a personal insult. They will burn our entire empire to ashes for it. Young Jiho sat with Hyunwoo in the Mars observation lounge, watching news reports of the human offensive. Your people are terrifying, he said quietly. Hyunwoo nodded slowly. Yeah, we can be. But we are only terrifying to people who threaten what we protect. The Krethic made a choice. They chose to come after you. They chose to threaten people under human protection. Now they are learning why that was a mistake. Will it ever end? Jiho asked. When they stop being a threat, Hyunwoo replied simply. When they understand that conquering other species is no longer acceptable. When they learn that some lines should not be crossed. The combined fleet assembled at the edge of Krethic home space, a sight that would have been impossible just months ago. Human warships formed the core, their hulls bearing the scars of constant combat. Repaired Valoran vessels flew alongside them, no longer refugees but allies. And scattered among them were ships from other species, former Krethic subjects who had heard the news and came seeking liberation. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Commander Taemin stood beside Captain Doyen, watching the fleet grow as more vessels arrived. Every hour brought new ships, new volunteers, new species ready to stand against the Dominion. This is madness, Taemin said, not for the first time. We are about to invade the Krethic home system. Their entire fleet will be waiting. Doyen studied the tactical display. Yes, but now they are defending instead of attacking. And they are learning what we learned long ago. Defense is harder than offense. You have to be everywhere. We just have to hit them where it hurts. Taemin shook his head. This started because you wanted to protect refugees. Now you are risking everything on an invasion. We cannot ask this of you. We never asked for any of this. The captain turned to face him, his expression serious. You did not ask. We chose. There is a difference. The Krethic threatened people under our protection. That cannot stand. Not just for you, but for any species that might need shelter in the future. Today we set the precedent. You do not attack Earth's refugees and walk away. In the Valoran settlement on Mars, families gathered around displays to watch the coming battle. Elder Counselor Mirai addressed her people one last time before the assault began. We came seeking refuge and humanity gave us shelter. Now they give us something more. They give us hope that the Krethic can be stopped. That conquest is not inevitable. Whatever happens today, remember that we witnessed goodness in the universe. We saw species choose compassion over convenience, courage over safety. That is worth remembering. Dr. Hana worked in the medical facilities, preparing for casualties that would surely come. Nurse Sujin worked beside her, both of them moving with the practiced efficiency of people who had done this too many times. You should not be here, Hana said. You should be with your family, safe on Earth. Sujin continued organizing supplies. My family knows where I am needed. These soldiers are fighting for your people. The least I can do is be here to patch them up when they come back. If they come back, Hana said quietly. They will come back, Sujin replied with absolute certainty. Because they are human, and humans do not give up. The fleet jumped into Krethik home space and immediately encountered resistance. The Dominion had pulled every available vessel back to protect their core worlds. The battle that erupted was the largest space engagement this sector of the galaxy had ever witnessed. But the Krethik quickly discovered a problem. They were fighting defensively, trying to protect multiple targets at once. The human fleet, advised by Velaran officers who knew Krethik tactics, struck at weak points and withdrew before the enemy could concentrate forces. More importantly, human cyber warfare teams were doing something the Krethik had never experienced. They hacked into the Dominion's communication networks and began broadcasting truth to Krethik civilians. Your government attacked refugees who had done nothing wrong. They failed. Now they have brought war to your homes. This was not necessary. This was not your choice. This was your leader's arrogance. In Krethik cities, citizens watched broadcasts showing the truth about the war. They saw the Valoran refugee fleet damaged and desperate. They saw the human response offering shelter without demands. They saw the Dominion's ultimatum and Earth's refusal. For the first time, many Krethik civilians understood that their government had started a war of choice, not necessity. Protests erupted across Krethik worlds. Citizens demanded answers. Why had the government attacked refugees? Why had they provoked a war with a species willing to invade the home system? The Dominion's absolute control began to crack under the weight of questions they had never had to answer before. War Master Krell watched his tactical display with growing desperation. His fleet was taking heavy losses. Worse, his own people were turning against the war effort. Riots were spreading. Production facilities were being shut down by striking workers. The monolithic control the Dominion had maintained for centuries was collapsing. As the space battle raged, Captain Doyen led a specialized strike force on a dangerous mission. Their transport, carrying a team of human marines and Velaran volunteers including young Jiho, penetrated deep into Krethik space. Their target was the Dominion Command Station, the nerve center of Krethik military operations. The boarding action was fierce. Human marines fought with the trained efficiency of professionals, but it was not easy. Krethik soldiers were skilled and desperate. The corridors of the station ran red with blood from both sides. Jiho found himself fighting alongside Hyunwoo, who had volunteered as an engineer for the mission. When a Krethik soldier nearly killed his friend, Jiho shot without hesitation. The young Velaran pilot who had lost everything months ago had found something worth fighting for. Not revenge, purpose. They fought their way to the command center where War Master Krell had barricaded himself with his senior staff. The Krethik leader stood before a weapons console, his hand hovering over controls that would activate a doomsday device, a weapon that would destroy everything in the system, including billions of Krethik civilians. "Stay back," Krell snarled. "I will trigger this device. Everyone dies, you, me, all of it. That is preferable to surrender." Yunji, who had insisted on joining the mission as a diplomatic liaison, stepped forward calmly. She had spent months working with refugees, helping families adapt, learning to communicate across species barriers. Now she used those skills in the most important conversation of her life. "War Master Krell," she said quietly, "look at your screens. Look at your cities. Your people are protesting. They are demanding peace. If you trigger that weapon, you will not be remembered as a warrior who chose honor. You will be remembered as a monster who murdered billions of your own people rather than admit defeat." Krell's hand trembled over the controls. "We have never surrendered, never. The Dominion does not yield." "Then be the first," Yunji said. "Be the leader who chose survival over pride. The one who saved his people instead of destroying them. You can end this right now. You can save everyone in this system. Or you can kill them all and prove that humanity was right to stop you." The command center was silent except for the hum of machinery. Every weapon was trained on Krell. Every eye watched his hand hovering over the doomsday controls. The choice was his. Finally, slowly, War Master Krell moved his hand away from the controls. His shoulders sagged. He looked suddenly old and tired. "I surrender," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The Dominion surrenders. The battle in space ceased within hours. Krethik ships powered down weapons and withdrew to neutral positions. On Krethik worlds, citizens celebrated in the streets. The empire that had conquered 47 civilizations had finally been stopped. The peace negotiations took weeks. Admiral Seok, supported by Velaran advisors and representatives from other liberated species, drafted terms that were harsh but fair. The Krethic Dominion would disarm to defensive forces only. They would pay reparations to conquered species. Krethic leadership would face trials for war crimes, and they would return all territory taken from the Velorans and other species. The Dominion's empire did not just lose a war. It collapsed entirely. Dozens of subjugated species gained their freedom. Worlds that had been conquered decades ago were finally liberated. Back in the Sol system, the Veloran settlement on Mars had grown into something permanent. Humans helped terraform one of Jupiter's moons, a massive project that would take years but would give the Velorans a true home. They named it New Velos. Dr. Hana and Nurse Sujin opened a joint medical academy, training doctors from multiple species. The combination of human and Veloran medical knowledge saved lives that would have been lost before. Jiho and Hyunwoo started a spacecraft design company. Their first project was a new type of vessel that combined human durability with Veloran efficiency. It sold to multiple species and made them both wealthy. Commander Tai-min took a position with the new Earth Coalition Defense Force, training human officers in Krethic tactics. It was strange teaching humans how to fight an enemy they had already defeated. But Tai-min knew there would be other threats someday. On New Velos, a massive monument was erected in the center of the first city. It showed a human hand reaching down to lift up a Veloran. The inscription was written in multiple languages, human and alien. We came as strangers fleeing death. They welcomed us as family and defended us with fury. This is humanity. This is hope. Elder Counselor Mirai, now older and ready to retire, sat with historian Minho on a balcony overlooking the growing city. Lights sparkled below as the sun set over New Velos. Families of different species living side by side in peace. Your species still frightens me sometimes, Mirai admitted. Such capacity for both compassion and violence. Minho nodded slowly. We contain multitudes. We can be terrible and we can be kind. We choose kindness when we can.